In this video today, we're talking about one of my favorite pieces of hiking gear that I've used consistently for the past 4 years, and that is the Danner Trail 2650 hiking shoe. Now, that might seem like a weird piece of gear to say is my favorite, but this has absolutely become my go-to favorite hiking shoe of all time. And I want to break it down and talk about what my experience has been like with this shoe in the various models that I've got here in front of me, and I genuinely think it's one of the best hiking shoes out there. But footwear is one of those unique things that it's difficult to talk about because it's hard to recommend or say this truly is the best shoe, because everybody has different sized feet, different shapes of their feet, and shoes are going to fit really unique and different for every single person out there. So I want to make it very clear that while I believe that this is my favorite and the best hiking shoe for me, it may not be the best option for others out there. What I do want to focus on with this review is just my on-trail experience for the past 4 years, what the build quality and anatomy and design of the shoe is like, and what the different models provide for an on-trail experience. Now, if you go back in time a little bit, before I started wearing the Danner Trail 2650, I was a hardcore, just a die-hard La Sportiva shoe fan. And I come from a history of like a few decades of rock climbing experience, and so I fit really good into La Sportiva climbing shoes, and it just was natural for me to also wear their mountain running shoes and their approach shoes. But I found that there was kind of an issue with the La Sportiva brand over time, and it was inconsistency in the sizing between models, as well as just a really frequent amount of changes that happened to models that I really fell in love with. And the previous generation was like a favorite, and then they would update it, and then it wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. And I can say that with the Danner, this shoe has stayed consistent for the 4 years that I've been wearing it, and I've been able to just test that across all the different models. So what do I have here in front of me? I've got your standard suede upper kind of mesh Trail 2650. I've got the GTX or the Gore-Tex lined version. I've got the Campo, and then I've got the mid Gore-Tex version. I've also had in the past the mesh option, but I don't have that. It just lived its life and had a lot of miles on trail and such. And then I just recently picked up from Huckberry, who is the sponsor of this video today, a fresh pair of Danner Trail 2650s for the 2025 hiking season. Okay, let's break down just the design and the build of this shoe. I think the first thing to point out with this is a shoe that is meant to be a lightweight hiker. I would not call this a trail running shoe. This is built to be super durable and versatile across all sorts of different terrains. And when you think about the name of the 2650, think about the Pacific Crest Trail, or the PCT. The length of the Pacific Crest Trail is 2,650 miles, and this shoe was inspired by essentially the varying terrain of the desert into the high mountains, into the granite areas of the Sierra, and then up into the northern sections of the PCT, just being able to handle all of those varying terrains that you have through those 3 states. My experience in using this in pretty much every condition and terrain that you can imagine, this is really well executed, and so it makes sense that it has all of those characteristics. Now, a pair of these, obviously depending on what size you get, is going to be roughly 24 ounces for the pair, so 12 ounces each, which I think is like a fair weight for the shoe. And that might change also depending on obviously being your mid-height, Gore-Tex lined, or the Campo version, or the mesh. So a lightweight hiker in that sense. But this is the suede upper version that is kind of the classic or the original 2650. And what do you have as far as the anatomy of this shoe. This is a 3-inch rise on the heel, not the heel to toe offset, which is actually going to be 8 millimeters. I'll mention and talk about that here in a second. But this is a low top shoe versus this being a mid height. So you have the options there for a little bit more stability in the ankle with the mid, but this is just that 3-inch height for around the ankle. You have a really nice shaped heel with the 2650 that really locks the heel in. And I have like really noticed how much like minimal movement you have in the heel and just around that cup of the shoe, which is nice because you don't want something that is going to allow for your heel to just move up and down and then create hot spots and then a friction point essentially for you to develop a blister on the back of your heel. So that locks in really nice. Then moving forward through the shoe, you've got a good tongue on the shoe that doesn't like fall to the side and shift around. It stays in place really good. And then your laces. Laces may seem like something that is kind of trivial or not a big deal, but the laces that are used on this shoe are awesome. Like, my shoe does not come untied, especially when I'm out doing some like really heavy bushwhacking and such. That stays tied and they're durable and they have lasted the entire lifespan of the shoe and even outlasted the shoe in that case. Then around the toe box of the shoe, this is where I think the shape is really important to point out. It is not the widest toe box, especially when you compare it to like a Topo shoe or an Ultra that has that really wide foot box that I know a lot of people like. But for somebody like me that has really narrow, just kind of princess feet, like I have tiny little princess feet that don't like to be in a really wide shoe. And I am actually not a fan of like Topo or Ultra because there's so much play side to side for my foot that it actually causes more issue for me than having something that's a bit more narrow. This is a bit more narrow. So if you do have a wide foot, very likely you're not going to enjoy wearing this shoe because it is a bit more narrow, and you can see through the arch and mid part of the foot, it's also quite narrow. And that can be something that could be of discomfort if you have like flat feet, not really high arches, and that kind of thing. So pay attention to that and know that going into this being an interesting shoe for you. If you want to try it out, go try it on. Walk around the store in it for a bit and see how it works out for you. Now, if you look at the bottom or the sole of the shoe, this is my favorite part of the shoe because I do a lot of off-trail hiking and backpacking and such. And this shoe is incredibly stable, and the lugs of the pattern for the sole is also aggressive enough without also being too aggressive, but it gives you a lot of traction in all sorts of different terrain, in mud, in snow, in wet environments, and in sand, on dirt and rock. It's just a really good like universal tread on the bottom of the shoe, and it has a Vibram sole, which is nice and sticky and it lasts for a long time. It's really durable. Like the Vibram rubber is fantastic, and this shoe has a few hundred miles on it at this point, and you can see that it's starting to wear out in comparison to a brand new shoe. Like they do last for a long time, but they also wear out over time like you would expect a shoe to do. But the Mega Grip outsole from Vibram is really well done, and I'm impressed with the durability of the shoe overall. Now, the other thing that you have in here is a TPU shank, or just like a rock plate essentially, that runs through the shoe to provide some stability, but also some protection against when you are moving around on like really rocky terrain and you step on a sharp rock. This is going to make it so that it is stable enough so that it doesn't collapse when you stand on that rock, but also make it so that anything sharp doesn't shoot up into the bottom of your foot and create a pain point and even just like compromise the shoe itself. So this is really stable and it handles all sorts of different terrains really well. The heel having that piece of rubber on the back also makes it more stable. But that is essentially the anatomy and the design of the shoe. Last thing I'll point out is from heel to toe, you have an 8mm drop. So this is not a zero drop shoe, but I find that 8mm is a good amount of drop to not be so aggressive that it is like really, really high on the heel. Like I used to wear the La Sportiva Ultra Raptor running shoe, mountain running shoe, and that has a 12mm drop. So you definitely notice that in that shoe versus 8mm. And I just do like the 8mm drop that you have with this shoe. Now I want to give a quick shout out to Huckberry, who is sponsoring this video today and I'm partnering with in 2025, which I'm really excited about. I picked up this brand new pair of the 2650 shoes through Huckberry and will be using them for my hiking this year. But they are way more than just having cool shoes. Huckberry is the one-stop men's shop for everything that an active, adventurous guy would want to shop for. Everything from like casual, hanging out around town stuff to then getting out on the trail and doing some hiking and camping, as well as really cool everyday carry gear. And it's all stuff that is like highly curated and just really well thought out to make it a fun shopping experience and not just like another online retailer. Huckberry is like a community. They provide a lot of cool information on their gear. They do interviews and such with owners of the companies that they have on their store. And it's just a fun place to shop for everything that a guy would want that's active and adventurous and also wants to look good. Like, look at this popover jacket that I'm wearing from Relwyn. I had no idea who this brand was ahead of doing some shopping on Huckberry, and I was like, dang, that thing looks really sharp. This is a nice, just synthetic pullover jacket to take the chill off and look good at the same time. So there are some in-house brands that Huckberry has as well that are specific to them, and they do collaborations with brands as well to create just one-off like specific products that are unique to Huckberry that you can only find on Huckberry as well. So I've got some links and such down in the description where you can check out Huckberry as well as the shoe that I'm talking about today. But want to thank them for supporting the channel, partnering with me this year, and so give the support to them as well by at least clicking the link and checking them out. Okay, so what has been my on-trail experience with the Trail 2650 shoe? I have 4 years of time now using the various models and out doing hundreds of miles with the shoe on. My experience with this is really vast and a lot of time spent with the shoe. And I keep going back to the shoe and buying the next like option available or just replacing it because I'm enjoying it that much. It doesn't cause me blisters. It's comfortable to wear and I trust the shoe as well in all of the terrain that I put myself into. I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second, but there is one model of the shoe that has been less than ideal or just not as enjoyable for whatever reason. I'll kind of try to break it down a little bit, but that is the Campo version of the shoe. What you have is a mesh material around the front of the shoe, a synthetic leather for the upper, your laces are different, and then it's more of a sock-like type of fit for your foot as opposed to having the loose tongue here at the top. And so the shoe felt a little bit more loose on my foot and just didn't have the qualities of being quite as stable for me on trail as like the suede upper or the Gore-Tex lined or the mid version, but just wasn't like tickling me the same way that these other options here have. Now the suede upper version, this has been my favorite. Now hundreds of miles of time spent in all of those different terrains that I talked about. And what I like enjoy the most about the shoe is I find myself not getting blisters. I find myself not getting overheated in the shoe, although I will say that in the hot months of the year when it is really hot outside, the ground is really warm, the suede upper does get pretty hot, and I find myself wanting to take my shoes off more often in those times when I'm taking a break, eating lunch or whatever, and letting the shoe kind of breathe, letting my feet breathe and such. So they don't breathe as well as some other options out there, but they also keep sand and rocks and dirt out of my socks really well because this upper material like protects that and makes it so that I'm not getting a bunch of junk in my shoe. But then additionally, when I find myself in wet environments, because you have the option to get a Gore-Tex version of this or a Gore-Tex liner, I can be in like dewy areas or just wet environments and not have to worry about getting wet feet because I can take a Gore-Tex lined shoe and protect my feet that way. But obviously, like, this is not going to dry as quickly if it gets soaking wet from the inside, like I'm wading through a river and such. And you also have the Gore-Tex line version of the mid-height shoe or boot as well. And so this has been kind of a shoulder season option for me that provides a little bit more warmth because it is Gore-Tex lined and it keeps the cold out for the most part. It's not insulated, but it makes it so my feet stay a little bit warmer and I've got a higher protection for water coming up with the mid-height as well. And just being on, I don't know, slick like ground and such, I like the mid-height for a little bit more stability in that sense. But when I'm out hiking in the desert, for example, and I find myself on terrain that is really uneven, or I'm moving across a section of slick rock that is angled to the side, this shoe, I love so much being in those kinds of conditions because of the amount of stability that it provides and not being too soft on your midsole and the foam that is used for the shoe. I don't find myself like slipping through the shoe and like pushing really hard against the edge, which I have done with some like really lightweight trail runners where you more or less just have like a mesh upper. Your foot just slides to the side and wants to like roll out of the like kind of that lateral buckling that would happen with a piece of metal or whatever. This is super stable with your foot in there and it makes it so that it, I don't know, it just doesn't create weird hot spots or make it feel like you can't trust the shoe. Now, from a scrambling standpoint, the Vibram sole also has been awesome. It's super durable, has lasted a very long time, but I do a lot of like scrambly stuff in the desert or I'm climbing up over mountain passes and in bouldery places, and this shoe I trust. Like I feel stable in it. I feel like I can be precise with my feet. It's not bulky, it's not overly heavy, but it's something that I can like essentially scramble up a class 3 or even class 4 rock face and know that I can trust it. It's not going to slip around. And even descending steep grades as well, I trust it. It does a great job. That's more or less my experience with it, and I just love the shoe. I have had probably 3 or 4 other models that have just worn out over time over the past 4 years, and it's seriously just such a good hiking experience. Now, lastly, let's talk about the price point for the 2650 shoe. This is a high performance hiking shoe in my opinion, and you are going to spend a little bit more money than maybe some other options out there on the market, but I have been able to find this at really good prices. I'll mention that here in a second, but you're gonna pay anywhere from $160 retail to $220 for the mid-height Gore-Tex lined option. And I think that that is competitive in a lot of ways to other options out there on the market for hiking specific shoes that are high performance, really well made, durable options. But that is, I think, at a higher end than maybe some other options out there. But I have been able to find many of these for much lower prices than that retail cost. For example, over the Christmas season, I found a pair of the mid-height Gore-Tex lined shoe that is a different color than this one here that normally would be $220. I paid $80 for them plus shipping from the Danner website. I have seen them on sale at pretty much any other retailer past like years of colors and whatever. Like you can find this shoe for lower prices than the retail price very, very often. There you go. That's my experience with my all-time favorite hiking shoe, the Danner Trail 2650. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments and what your favorite hiking shoe is, and let's have a conversation about it. But there you go. Danner Trail 2650. I've got some links down in the description to check it out for yourself. Thanks for watching today, guys. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. Hope you have an awesome day. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.